So, it is now time to look at another new light novel. This one, I think, is even newer than most of the ones I've been looking at because the second volume just came out like a month ago at time of recording. But anyway, this is a new light novel where I don't even have manga to reference for why I read it, or even an anime, or even a wiki article to look at. This is completely new, uh, completely bare, and I hope I don't regret my decision at reading this book. And if I'm talking about it, that means I probably don't regret reading it. Reign of the Seven Spellblades is one of a multitude of magic high school stories taking place in a world where magic has evolved to the point where people can launch spells from swords. Instead of using wands, the wizards of this world use swords, and that is why I bought this book. That is the exact reason I bought this book, because I really like the premise, because it sounds really cool. Like, if you give, Gandalf used the sword, but if he used magic from the sword and not his staff, that would be something. But anyway, yes, again, this premise is the main reason I decided to read the book. Anyway, talking about the people who use magic from their swords, there are people who have this Spellblade technique, which is a strike that can be neither blocked nor dodged, and is a guaranteed kill when you're in a close enough range. So it's like a blaze blue finisher, super flashy, super deadly, kills when it hits, and there are only 7 of these things. These techniques are legendary, and only one person can have them at a time, as they are passed down from student to master. And again, there are only 7 wielders. Now, in Volume 1, the Spellblades are an unfortunate background element, because we will not be discussing them until the end of the book, sadly. Anyway, as for our story stars a fresh new crop of young students to a magic academy, like most magic high school stories do. And we are met with our main character, Oliver Horn. Oh god. Oliver Horn is an average light novel protagonist, but there are very, and I mean very, strong hints to a darker side to his personality, and we'll talk about that when we get to it, when we talk about the ending, because I can't talk about this book without talking about its ending. Anyway, he quickly meets a girl from this world's version of Japan, who's a foreign exchange student, it's not even an exchange, she's just a foreign student. Her name is Nano. Okay, I'm failing to pronounce her name. Give me a second. Nano, because it's like Nana, but there's an O at the end. That's why I'm failing to pronounce it. I'm just gonna say Nano. Hibiya. I can pronounce her last name, but I can't pronounce her first name. And this is written not in the standard Japanese, which is last name, first name. This is written first name, last name, because this all takes place in fantasy Europe. She is the foreign exchange student, again, not even exchange, just a foreign student, from this world's version of Japan, where they really don't have magic. So she's a rarity because she's a wizard from Japan, because she can use magic, or at least she can unconsciously use magic. She has difficulty, with actual magic. It's more instinct for her. Anyway, she has a strong love of battle because she grew up with all that samurai culture, Bushido stuff, super to the extreme because, fancy Japan. And she wants to solve all of her problems with a sword, because that's the way she lives. At one point, Oliver does see her naked when she's bathing in the morning, trying to cleanse herself, and he notices all the scars on her body from all the fights she's been in her entire life. And her main goal, at least right now, is to find someone to fulfill her life's ambition. That is, to have a super fight to the death with somebody, which will either cause her to kill them or for her to die. She doesn't really care about her own death. She just wants the thrill of this amazing fight. Something that everyone points out as a bit of a red flag as a personality thing. Anyway, Another point about this world, besides the wizards and the swords, is that the world is in the middle of a societal change, as there's great debate over whether the magical fantasy races should be given human rights. Like, they're debating if centaurs and elves and orcs should have human rights, and I think in stories only been a few years since centaurs were given human rights. Before then, people used to eat them, and that's kind of fucked up. Ah. I imagine that actually happened in the real world, but still it's kind of fucked up when you think about it. So, yes, as you can figure from that statement that society is changing and there are debates on this kind of stuff, people have their own opinions, from the old guard wizards who don't give a fuck, hate change, and want the world to stay the way it's always been, at least to them, the societal conscious who don't really fully accept it, but also don't really go against it. They're just kind of bland on the whole subject. To the newer cast who actively fight for the rights of these fantasy creatures and want the rules of the world to change. So that's another background element. We have two now in this fantasy high school. So, because I keep mentioning fantasy high school, you can easily compare the story to Harry Potter with swords. And I greatly agree. You can easily compare the story to Harry Potter. I mean, the cloaks all the students wear, they are very reminiscent of the Harry Potter cloaks, and I just can't unsee that. It's kind of funny because they kind of look like what would happen if Nomura designed a house cloak for Harry Potter. It, instead of like being Slytherin or something, you're in house belt, because your cloak have a lot of belts on it, and their clothes do have a lot of belts on them, and I kind of am confused why. Maybe it's just an artist thing, like Nomura. Anyway, so a bulk of the story, at least the first part, is early on dealing with Nano's battle craziness, as well as conflicts with the more asshole-ish students and upperclassmen. Your standard high school issues outside of the whole blood battle crazy classmate / potential love interest, because Nano focuses in on Oliver as the person that can maybe give her fight of ultimate destiny, and Oliver's kind of into it. Like, he doesn't want to kill her, but he almost goes all out on her in a fight and is like, oh, I might kill her. Oh, what the fuck? Or I was about to kill her. And no, she's into it. He's kind of into it, but he doesn't want to go that far. And she might be developing romantic interest because Oliver almost killed her. I mean, almost. They're about to kill each other. And then there's this mystery element from reaching back to chapter 1, which there was an accident with the parade of fantasy creatures, and especially with this one orc, and there's a mystery surrounding the orc, in particular why it went on a rampage. Now people debate, was it its nature? Was it just because something provoked it? Why did the orc rampage? And so that's a major mystery element, as well as, dealing again with the asshole upperclassmen and other students. And then the school at night turns into fucking Tartarus from Persona 3. I'm not even joking. Like, they're just explicitly told not to stay in the school at night, and there's a moment where they have to go back to get something, so they do the whole being in the school at night, and they come across some weird shit that feels like it should be a JRPG boss. Like a dude who's like using bones in a woman who's going to apparently rape and murder them. And apparently they're also students, but they're like the evil students who live in the basement. And not Slytherins living in the basement. No, I mean like they live in like some kind of underground magic labyrinth or something. I didn't fully get that. It really only pops up in one chapter, and it's kind of confusing and terrifying that literally as soon as the sun goes down, this school becomes a nightmare factory. And I kind of want to know why. But again, it's only mentioned in like one chapter, dealt with in one chapter, where they do this, and they're like, never again, never again. And it's like, no, do it again, because I want to figure out what just happened. Anyway, as you can tell from that statement, there's a lot of dark shit going around. And this world works alongside the world of fate, in which wizards and sorcerers do all kinds of weird evil shit in order to improve magic in general and their family bloodlines and stuff like that. Now, I really can't talk about this book without talking about the final twist at the very end of the story. So, spoilers abound. I'm going full into the final few chapters of this thing because that's what's pushing me on to read Volume 2. So, to give a summary of events up until this point, the group has dealt with the asshole seniors and have gotten accidentally involved in a weird plot involving an orc who they discover has the ability to speak human, because in this setting orcs don't, like, they can't speak the human tongue. So one of their friends is super progressive and discovers that this orc can talk human, and so at least this mystery who made the orc speak human, because it shouldn't be possible, at least in their context it shouldn't be possible. They discover that one of their seniors, someone that they thought was friendly, has actually been doing horrific experiments on magical creatures, in particular the specific orc, in order to create an orc that can speak human so it can vouch for its own human rights. But she's been murdering several dozens of them to produce the one. So methinks your math is off a bit there, or your heart's in the right place, but your methods are kind of fucked up, which is the point. Anyway, they're obviously evil, or messed up in the head, probably both, because, magic world. Anyway, obviously they lead to a fight, and they have the mystic eyes of petrification. and I was trying not to make a Fate reference, but it's really hard to not make a Fate reference when they're literally fighting Medusa. She doesn't have the long purple hair, though. She just has the eyes that Medusa has. And she wears glasses. Anyway, they fight her, at least a pretty cool fight. She also has an eye implanted into the palm of her hand, which I thought was honestly kind of a clever twist on it. She has the one human eye, and then she replaced one of her eyes with the mystic eye. And they're like, well, we have two eyes of petrification. Where are we going to put the other one? Put it in her hand. Just like, that's honestly kind of clever. Yeah. Nano invents the 7th Spellblade technique. I didn't mention it before because major spoilers, but there are only 6, but the title says they're 7, so you obviously know that 7th one's going to pop up somewhere down the line, and Nano invents it here using a kind of space-time sword technique that I really don't understand how it worked, but it was all instinct, so she doesn't even understand how she did it. But she invents a 7th Spellblade technique on the spot. So, yeah. So, basically, obviously, the teachers are going to investigate. There's going to be all this kind of stuff. And so, little Oliver gets alone and close with the one professor who's kind of built like a Snape-type figure. He's super sketchy, super suspicious, and seems to be up to stuff, which he is. He was helping the previous student, not because he shares her ideals, but just for the sake of knowledge, because that's what he's about. So Oliver fights him, but not for great justice. He's fighting him because he has a grudge. In the midst of his fight, Oliver uses a Spellblade technique because he's also one of the Spellblades, and then kills the professor before donning his evil overlord guise, and then all of his followers show up because they're also in the school. They've infiltrated the school, and they're basically planning to burn the mother down. For what reason? Oliver apparently came to the school to study, but he's actually at the school to find the people who killed his mother and murder the fuck out of them, because his mother was the previous Spellblade of their particular technique before him, and she was murdered by a group at the very beginning of the story, like in the prologue chapter. So Oliver is out to kill the people who killed his mother, and this professor was one of the people who killed his mom. So, yeah. And he's basically going to destroy anything that gets in the way of his revenge scheme, a la Sasuke, and that might include the school itself, because he says he at some point will probably have to take out the principal, who's this kind of Amazoness figure who basically has superpowers. I mean, is even more powerful than everyone else in the world. We didn't really get too much into that, but she just has the magic charisma. Overall, this was a pretty good start. It seems like it could be interesting. It's pretty slow going at points, which makes sense. It's a first volume. We have to get used to the characters and how they interact with each other. Uh, I really like the twist at the end. Not only with Nano inventing the like seventh Spellblade, because she's the title character. I mean, she's the cover girl, so she's going to be important. But also because we have Oliver with this super dark secret that was hinted at fairly. I mean, we didn't get the specifics of it, but there were hints that he had a darker side and how he was holding back in fights. That there's something up with this kid, and now we know he's not necessarily evil, but he's going to take out everyone in his way of his revenge. So again, a la Sasuke. Although in this case there's no Naruto, Sasuke's the main character, and the closest thing to a Naruto he has is a battle crazy Japanese girl who wants to fight to death with them in the frenzy of sex and violence because that's what she understands. Yes, it is hinted that Nano might have like romantic attraction to him, but she really doesn't know what that means outside of her desire to fight him. Yeah, yeah, as you can tell, this does come recommended, even though I did spoil the ending. It's how we get to that ending that really matters, and there's a lot of cool points before that point. Uh, Again, recommended. This is a fun read. I'm looking forward to Volume 2. It's already out by the time of recording, but I'm honestly waiting until they release Volume 3 so that I don't have to wait too long in case Volume 2 also has a pretty big cliffhanger. So, yeah, again, recommended. If you're looking for an interesting new light novel to read, pick this one up. Just ignore all the Harry Potter-ness if you're not over that situation. So, until next time, everybody.